let's say I am a founder and I have an idea of how to do something, but I don't have technical skills. What if I get a technical co-founder and that person builds that? Like, who owns the IP? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And again, it's a real sort of like issue that founders can sometimes they can fall into a bit of a pitfall with it. So I guess the first thing to note is IP, whether it's sort of like coding software or again coming up with like logo branding, whatever it might be, it belongs to the person who creates it. However, I would caveat that very strongly with, under UK employment law, if you create any IP in the course of your employment, then the IP belongs to your employer. And so effectively what that means in practice is, if you're a founder and you come up with an idea and maybe you yourself create some of the very early stage IP, that IP just belongs to you personally. And it's not until you then set up your company, or maybe you've already incorporated your company, that you have to assign that IP or transfer the ownership of that IP to your company. And that's certainly something that once you get to sort of maybe you're preparing for an exit, or perhaps you're preparing for your sort of funding rounds where your investors are going to start conducting some due diligence. That's absolutely one of the key questions that they're going to ask, is about the IP ownership, and then not just about the IP that's been created by the founder. And they will often want to see any of those kind of IP assignment agreements or IP transfer agreements backward looking, meaning that any IP that was created before the company was incorporated, because quite often that can be the order of events. They want to make sure that that IP is captured and transferred into the company. And then to your point, Anastasija, about if you then get a coder, a developer, someone, a contractor basically, to create some IP for you, the number one key thing that any companies, any founders must be aware of is that that IP will belong to the contractor, unless you have an IP assignment clause or IP like transfer of ownership clause in whatever contract or document you've signed with that contractor. And again, that is a real issue that we have seen a number of startups, particularly tech startups, sort of fall foul of. You're working with someone, they're a contractor, you've got a good relationship with them, they're responsible for a whole section of your IP, which accounts for a lot of the inherent value of your company. But it's not until you actually get to the point where, maybe you have brought in a lawyer to help you with the due diligence because you're about to do a funding round, that you even uncover this issue, and it becomes apparent that actually your company doesn't even own the IP that you think that you've built. And then, it may all be hunky-dory and you could just go to the developer at that point and ask them to sign an IP assignment agreement, and they do, and you've managed to resolve the issue. And we've certainly done that with a lot of clients, and it can be nice and smooth. But if, for example, maybe that developer doesn't work with you anymore, or perhaps there's been a falling out, you can have some real difficulty trying to get that IP assigned, or maybe not necessarily difficulty, but it can be very costly because they own something that you want to get your hands on.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that
No,
was
I
the
didn't
case.
know
It's
that
good to
either.
know that.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah, IP ownership is huge in that kind of contractor relationship. It's a really big, that's, I would say, one of the biggest red flags in terms of developing any IP or any tech, is making sure that it's the company that actually owns it. And you can only make sure of that by having robust IP assignment clauses in place in the relevant contracts.
In the agreement about the contract, the kind of statement of work that
exactly.
work that
So
is done for the company. Yeah. But
yeah.
I see
So
what you're
whoever
saying.
that contractor is, you have a contract with them that says that they agree. It might just be a straight IP assignment agreement. Basically, it just says that they agree that whatever IP they've created for your business, they assign it. They transfer the ownership of it to your business.
Okay.
Or it might be that provision is folded into a sort of a wider contract, which is you, the contractor, agree to build this for us, and you're going to work for us for however many days or whatever it might be. We're going to pay you this amount. We've got confidentiality provisions in there. We've maybe got perhaps some exclusivity or non-compete provisions in there as well. And then you've got the IP provisions in that sort of wider contract. But either way, you definitely want to make sure that whoever is building your IP has signed something to say that they are transferring the ownership of that IP to you as well.
Wow. That's like a gold mine to just know that. I just thinking about, wow, because you said, depending on where they are in the journey, Like you can see how so easily that might happen further up the chain. It's just like, oh, can you help me out with this?
Absolutely.
Friends, buds, and then wow,
we see like there are some, particularly now in the age of AI, where a lot of like really sophisticated tech is getting built very quickly and gaining a lot of traction, a lot of high value without necessarily having to bring in investors. And so a lot of these companies that might have been, kind of very early stage bootstrap companies are kind of going stratospheric without necessarily bringing in, whether it's the investors or the lawyers or anyone with that kind of legal expertise at those early stages. And then you're almost getting to exit by the point at which someone says, oh, hold on a minute, who owns this IP?